Nice to be with you all. I wonder if I can go to another mic and walk around so I'm not... Does this work? Am I all right? Okay, good. Climate change to me is a really vital issue. I come from the ocean state. We have sea levels rising. Our map is going to change. It's going to require enormous expenditure and create enormous loss. So I think a lot about this all the time. And the topic that I want to discuss with all of you is the need for better organization on our side of the aisle. Our adversaries are naturally very well organized. They tend to be centrally funded. They're down to about a half a dozen families that put most of the money behind the Republican Party. If you look at the Koch brothers network, which is more powerful than the Republican Party, that is full-on central control. So they have big planning advantages over us. They have big advantages in terms of developing strategy, and they have big advantage in terms of playing the long game. You might have noticed that in today's news, the long game is mentioned twice, once by George Will and once by Karl Rove, talking about how you win playing the long game. And we, as Democrats and progressives, need to get better at that. There are three areas where I think we can particularly improve. One is on the environmental side. I love our environmental groups. I work really closely with our environmental groups. But the battle planning for any particular occasion by our environmental groups, I think is probably less good than the ancient Assyrians in the days of cuneiform. And really simple battle strategies like good cop, bad cop elude us because it's so difficult to try to get all of those wonderful, terrific, outstanding organizations to get together in what you might call the command tent and decide who's going to do what so that we get the biggest collective victory rather than each individual group doing its thing. So they get it. They're working more and more to that direction. LCV and NRDC in particular work very closely together on the political side, but that needs to continue to bloom, and we all need to continue to think in those terms. How do we better organize? How do we better strategize? How do we play the long game? And how do we get more wins? A second area is among lawyers. There are a great number of progressive organizations who all have lawyers. And those lawyers are often excellent lawyers. They're outstanding lawyers. They're well-known, well-regarded, successful, and passionate. But there is not a mechanism right now for all of them to come together and decide what to do against a common adversary. And the most immediate common adversary is the effort by the right wing to take over the American court system. First at the Supreme Court level, we're seeing it now in the Judiciary Committee, which I sit on, at the circuit court level. If we wait around until we get an offensive nominee and then try to stop that nominee, we have given up 90% of the field. We have to be out there way in advance, exploding their articles, exploding their arguments, demonstrating where the decisions completely violate conservative principles but help big special interests, being in the law review publications, being in the state bar publications, making sure that our amicus briefs really have punch, and making sure that we're showing who's really behind their amicus briefs. There is a great array of work that could be done, and when I was doing chores as a boy, my dad used to say, many hands make light work, so pitch in. If we get all of the groups together, the labor groups, the trial groups, the environmental groups, the women's groups, many hands do make light work, and you can come up with a strategy that will help explode the narrative behind the appointment of these special interest judges. The last group that I'll mention is the scientists, beginning with the tobacco industry, and then with the tobacco industry, primitive infrastructure picked up by the fossil fuel industry and developed to a much, much more complex and dynamic structure, there has been a concerted attack on science. Big industry is behind it, And it is very clearly big industry's desire that their machinery is able to take on science, not all of science. They don't want to unload science completely. They count on being able to use these things and have cars and so forth. But what they want to be able to do is have a machine that is so powerful and so effective that wherever it chooses to take on science, which is usually going to be in environment and public health areas, they can win. And they come into that fight with enormous advantages. They come into that fight with the advantage of virtually unlimited money. If, as the IMF says, the subsidy for fossil fuel is $700 billion a year just in the United States of America, that's unlimited money to spend. They don't have to win. All they have to do is convince the public that there's actually a real disagreement. And since they're disagreeing, they're a long way there. They have big structural advantages. They don't have to go through peer review. They go straight to the talk radio. They're not speaking science, they're speaking soundbite. We've got to be able to counter that, and we've got to be able to counterattack at that machinery. We've got to be able to identify who is behind all of this stuff so that the American people don't just see the outcome, they see the whole operation that led to it. That all requires organization. That requires strategy. That requires seeing the long term. And it means that whatever group you're passionate with, whatever group you work with, there's got to be a part of your mind, a part of your commitment that says, okay, we're doing what we're doing, but there's got to be a place over here where we are all going to work together. We're going to strategize. We're going to figure out what the long game is. We're going to delegate tasks, and we're going to figure out how to win. The Assyrians put a flag up over a tent so that people would know that was the command tent, and the leaders of all the different tribes would come together, the different groupings, and they'd make a plan. Okay, we're going to run right at them tomorrow morning, and you guys are going to go around the hill and run at them from the side, and you guys on the horses are going to wait until we're really joined, and then you're going to, whatever the plan was, the plan was. We need to be able to plan that effectively with the environment. We need to be able to plan that effectively with the countermeasures against the stacking of the courts, and we need to plan that effectively with respect to the predatory anti-science beast that industry has corrupted. The bottom line in my closing statement in all of this is that there is a common thread through all of those things. The common thread through all of those things is that our democracy has very largely been overtaken by big special interests. The Citizens United opportunity to spend unlimited money, which got juiced up with the very quickly created ability to hide the hands that are producing that money and create a dark money problem that is worse than the unlimited money problem. And then, of course, the parallel and inevitable threat that if you can spend unlimited money and if you can spend unlimited dark money, you can threaten to spend unlimited dark money, and that threat is always going to be private and secret and corrupting. And that is the common thread behind the problem with science, the problem with climate change, and the problem with stacking the courts. There is a machinery that has been built behind that by big special interests to produce those outcomes. That is a strategic group. They plan, they organize, they think ahead, they have a strategy. We've got to be just as good at that, and we've got to focus on outing their machinery. If we're simply responding to the artillery shells as they land on us, that's not a strategy. In the military, they call it counter-battery fire. You got to go after the folks who are taking the shots at you. And because they're, by and large, funded by special interests, because it's creepy billionaires at the back of it, because they want smelly results that the American public doesn't want, once we engage, we will have big advantages in that fight. But we can't have that fight until, as groups, we work better together, and those are the three areas I would start with. Environmental groups need to up their game on having a coordinated command tent. The lawyers for groups who are fighting back against the takeover of the courts need to have an organized place where they can have a plan, decide on the plan, execute the plan, and persist in the plan. And scientists need to stand up and, in a concerted and thoughtful and permanent way, take on the predatory science denial beast that has been erected by industry and that now stalks the scientific universe. So You're all doing wonderful things. I hope we're going to have an amazing victory in 2018. But as you pursue your passion, remember, we can't be playing checkers against chess players. We can't be playing second-grade soccer against people who play position. We've got to up our game strategically, and when we do, there are big wins that are before us. It is on us to do this. We can, we should, and when we do, victories will follow. Thank you very much.